These cars right here are the Nexon EV Max. They can also be called the long-range version of the Nexon EV, and while on the outside it's pretty identical to the Nexon EV that we've seen getting common and more common on Indian roads, getting more acceptance, the Nexon EV Max promises enhanced range and enhanced drive performance and feature upgrades on the inside as well. This is HT Auto, I'm Shubhadeep, and today we're taking a first drive extensive look of the Tata Nexon electric vehicle Max. The Nexon EV Max is nearly identical to the Nexon EV that you've been seeing on Indian roads. So you get a sleek DRL unit on the front, LED projector headlights as well. You get the same fog lamps, and the grille and overall face treatment is similar. On the side, the alloy design has been changed, but that's all the difference that you will find. Thankfully, despite the larger battery pack on the inside, the ground clearance and the boot space remains identical. And at the rear, the design and layout of the tail lights and the rear bumper remains identical to the Nexon EV. In fact, you don't even get a badge saying that this here is the Nexon EV Max. But while the outside remains nearly identical, there are some very noticeable updates to the feature list on the inside of a car that's now offered in two trims, the ZX Plus and the ZX Plus Lux that you see here. Now, among the feature upgrades in the cabin of the Nexon EV Max, one very interesting feature that I like, especially under the summer Delhi sun, is that you can set this car to pre-cooling mode via the Z Connect app. So just a few press of buttons and I can select 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 minutes of pre-cooling before I actually have to step in. So when I do, I get a nice, cool, comfortable car. Now, once you do step inside the vehicle, it is largely familiar but with certain subtle additions and upgrades rather. So you get the nice premium looking jewel dial right in the middle of the center console. It's very easy to operate. Right next to it are the modes to select Sport and Eco. The Nexon EV Max by default starts on normal city mode. The feature list also has wireless phone charging, so you can place your phone here and set it to charge automatically. That aside, the leatherette seats on the front offer ventilation on the top end ZX Plus Lux trim. The infotainment screen is common. It's the Harman infotainment screen that you see in most Tata cars. You do get an electric sunroof now, and there is an air purification system as well. There is no change to the driver display, which remains semi-digital now for a car that is priced as the Nexon EV Max is. I would have perhaps wanted a little bit more distinction on the screen right here. But apart from that, the space and the comfort levels on the Max is similar and identical to the Nexon EV, which means decent amount of leg space, knee room, and even shoulder room for passengers at the back. The headroom is great, and the Nexon EV continues to benefit from a high ground clearance, and that translates also to the Nexon EV Max, and therefore you have a nice good view of the road ahead, and you feel like you're not so much in a crossover as much as you are in an SUV that is of course battery powered. But what is the larger battery pack promising on the Nexon EV Max? It's time to get this car on the move, so let's find out. Now, we've received the car with full battery, so it shows that the real world range should be around 361. In fact, 361 kilometers is what it's showing. So let's drive this car as well to figure out how much of that range is actually true. Now, right from the word go, the bump up in power and torque figures are instantly evident on the Nexon EV Max. This car produces 140 HP and has 250 Newton meters of torque. And while that is best experienced and felt in the sport mode, by default you are in the city mode, and well, even that is quite capable. So press of the accelerator and the Nexon EV gets a move on with quite a decent performance. It's not the quickest electric vehicle that we've driven in this particular segment, but it is definitely as capable as it has ever been, and then some more. Now, when you're on the move, the feel of the cabin is very similar to the feel for someone who's been a regular inside the Nexon or even the Nexon EV. But when you're driving, the feel is deja vu. It's reminiscent of the Nexon EV. But yes, there is a clear difference. So if you do go to a Tata Motors showroom to test drive, I would suggest that you first drive the Nexon EV and then test out the Nexon EV Max. And you will actually acknowledge that there is a slightly more excited feel about the Max than the regular conventional Nexon EV. The battery pack inside the Max is 33% larger than what you get in the Nexon EV. That basically translates into that larger range that Tata Motors has been claiming, has been proudly brandishing and showcasing in the vehicle. But what is really interesting, smart, and all credit to the Tata engineers is that there is really, despite the fact that there is that larger battery, there is no difference in the space and comfort that you get, especially at the back. We've mentioned that the under-thigh support, even the leg room and the knee room, is great in the Max, and well, that is really an engineering marvel of sorts. How Tata engineers say they have achieved it is they have, to put it simply, have had a modification on the floor bed of the vehicle to allow for the larger battery pack to be accommodated without actually compromising on the ground clearance. Remember, Nexon's ground clearance is one of its best selling points. Now let's talk about the multi-mode regeneration. That's absolutely crucial to the range that you will finally achieve with this vehicle. And if you're taking the Max out on long drives, you would want to have a maxed out regeneration. So you get regeneration in 3 modes. There's level 1, level 2 and level 3. For those who are not familiar with what regeneration is, it's basically the intensity of braking without you actually having to press the brake. You just lift your foot off the accelerator and the car slows down. At level 1, the intensity is at its least, but the regeneration also is at its least. And obviously, conversely, at level 3, it's at its max, so you will regenerate and perhaps get a better range in the long run when the level 3 is engaged. What is great is that level 3, the intensity of the braking isn't as overwhelming as we found it can be on some other EVs, especially some of the EVs that we've driven in the luxury segment. It does get a bit overwhelming, but on the Nexon EV Max, as is also the case on the Nexon EV, the regeneration is nicely tuned and you still feel like you are in control. Remember, on the EV Max, the regeneration only gets activated at around when there is 80 to 85% of the battery remaining. Won't happen beyond that number. So if you're starting on a fully charged car, the regeneration is not immediately activated. Now, while the range of the Nexon EV Max is impressive and the drive dynamics are great too, there will come a time when this car runs out of juice. But you can power it back to max using a 3.3 kilowatt hour battery charging setup, or now absolutely brand new is a 7.2 kilowatt hour charging setup as well. That's the one you see right behind me. Charging the vehicle is as easy as it has always been. Press of a lever on the inside, the flip cap here opens. You just take out the cover here, and this would be installed at your residence or office spaces, wherever you want Tata Motors to come and install it, and just plug it. And so that there is no misuse, you will be given a chip like this. All you have to do is touch, and that's it. Your car will be powered on using this high capacity charging point here. Tata is claiming that this car can be maxed to 100% charge in around 6 to 7 hours. The Nexon EV Max is clearly aimed at a customer who has a long drive range on a daily basis, or someone who wants to take frequent highway journeys in an electric power vehicle. But it comes at a premium. You have to pay anywhere between 2.5 to 3 lakh rupees for this model vis-a-vis the regular Nexon electric vehicle. Think of it as something like buying a petrol or a diesel model of the same car. If your drive distance, your range is a lot on a daily basis, then this car will be a value-added proposition in the long run. But if it's in the city that you will most likely drive this car somewhere between 50 to 100 kilometers, then the Nexon EV, frankly, in our opinion, does fair justice to the amount that you pay. What do you think about the Nexon EV Max? Do let us know. In this episode though, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching.